to choose this point in time, just weeks before an election, in order to squash a endorsement of Kamala Harris was really an outrage. About 300,000 people canceled their subscription. And when that came about, I began to think, I think I need to leave. We all are faced now with existential questions. And I began looking around and said, well, I've been strongly advocating for democracy for years now, and I have been critiquing Donald Trump, but is the institution that I am working for now part of the problem? And it went from bad to worse, obviously.
Let's talk about media tonight. That's our major focus. We will talk politics, but you have a very unique perspective on the evolution of media today. You made news yourself. You cover newsmakers, but made news announcing your departure from the Post to co-found The Contrarian. You had multiple criticisms of Post owner Jeff Bezos, including his blocking of an editorial board endorsement of Kamala Harris. Since you left, he announced that opinion pieces will support free markets and free speech. But I'm really curious for you, what was your evolution in deciding to go? What was there a tipping point, or was it a slow build? What happened?
Well, certainly there had been a concern by myself and many people in the media world that there had been a framing for the media that at one point was essential, but frankly had been antiquated and inappropriate for the era in which we live. A frame that says we have two pro-democracy parties, they have different views, but basically they're both equally devoted to the Constitution, equally devoted to improving America, was once upon a time, I think, reasonably accurate. It's not anymore. And the failure to adapt and to clearly understand the moral and political stakes that we are facing at this point was a growing concern. And then in the past 12 months or so, as Donald Trump once again returned to the presidential race and won the Republican nomination, and then heading into the race, I became extremely concerned because once we saw that large corporations, large financiers, whether it was media or non-media, were obeying in advance, were beginning to curry favor with him, I began to suspect that something was up. And of course, as you alluded to, the decision not to endorse Kamala Harris and the reason given that was so obviously specious, that we're not going to endorse candidates anymore. We had just endorsed a slew of Senate candidates, congressional candidates, local candidates. And of course, to choose this point in time, just weeks before an election, in order to squash a endorsement of Kamala Harris was really an outrage. And the Post readers, many of whom were lifetime subscribers, and their parents were lifetime subscribers, were appalled by this decision. About 300,000 people canceled their subscription. And they did so because they had relied upon, on the news side, clear, unflinching journalism, and on the opinion side, not only a candor and an insight about politics, but I think a moral weightiness that the people there, whether they were right, left, or center, understood the task, the obligation of journalism that is not only candor, but insight and really respect for American institutions. And when that came about, I began to think, I think I need to leave. We all are faced now with existential questions. Is the organization, is the employer I'm working for, is the car I'm purchasing, are the choices I'm making supportive or not supportive of the survival of democracy? Because that's what we're facing right now. We really are facing an existential point. Democracy will either live or not live. And I began looking around and said, well, I've been strongly advocating for democracy for years now, and I have been critiquing Donald Trump, but is the institution that I am working for now part of the problem? And it went from bad to worse, obviously. Jeff Bezos, along with other media tycoons, gave the Trump Library $1 million, or rather the inaugural committee
Yeah.
$1 million. And that was appalling to me. Can we imagine the Grahams or other great media families giving $1 million to a president? And then we saw other media companies begin to kiss the ring, bend the knee. We saw the settlement from ABC, $15 million for really a specious kind of lawsuit. So this continued and continued. Our Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist was told she couldn't run a cartoon that mocked Jeff Bezos. And that really was the beginning and the
That's
end.
the final.
And
Yeah.
I said, I can't have an audience who every day wonders, is this really what Jennifer thinks? Is this Jennifer trying to mollify an owner who's trying to mollify a presidential candidate, now a president-elect? And so, together with Norm Eisen, who's a great friend of the program as well, and I decided, let's take a leap of faith. Let's try something new. We were not the first people to move to Substack, and I have to say it has been a wonderful platform. Many people who used to be at large media institutions have taken the plunge either there or on other platforms, which we should talk about. And I think in some ways, I can't believe it took me as long to go, but the timing was very fortuitous, and we could talk a little bit about that.
You probably saw it's at 5 million subscribers. So
Well,
Substack is really taken off.
it absolutely is. And I think it's because of a few things. One, because it's the ultimate marketplace of ideas and meritocracy. You like somebody, you want to follow them, and they're there. And it's also a very user-friendly site. And what's more, the intimacy that you get with readers, viewers is tremendous. We do live chats 3 times a week, and you really feel connected to the audience. We listen to them, we invite them, there's instant feedback, and I have really enjoyed that aspect of Substack.
I should mention those are the paying subscribers. There are a lot more people reading things on
Yes,
Substack,
yes.
but those are actual paying subscribers. So you've laid out very clearly why for you it would have been wrong for you to stay at the Post. But does what newspapers write, the editorial positions they take, does it really matter when people are so sorted now politically anyway? I mean, it's hard for me to imagine a presidential endorsement in the Washington Post would really matter to anyone. Now, smaller things that people don't know as much about, yeah, I could see highly influential. Presidential race, I don't know. The timing, of course, highly suspect, as you pointed out. But do newspapers really have influence now?
They have less influence than they used to, I will say, in part because they're losing their audience. And the same could be said of cable networks. When you take your audience for granted or you're grasping for some other audience that doesn't exist, you are going to lose relevance. You are going to lose your readership. And I think an endorsement is more about the paper in some ways than the person you are endorsing. Yes, it's helpful to readers, and particularly for down ballot races, as you know, where it's sometimes hard for people to get information. But what it really lets the readers know is, what are our values? What are our principles? How do we evaluate politicians? By what criteria should we evaluate politicians? Every endorsement comes with a rationale. It's not just vote for this guy or vote for that gal, they're the best. It really takes into consideration the importance of character, the importance of experience, the importance of constructive pragmatism. And so when a paper sets forth a expression of support, they're also explaining themselves, and it reveals the soul of the paper. And that, in some way, was why this decision was so bad and so dangerous. And as was alluded to, it got worse after I left, because then they came down with an edict that you shall not write what you want, you shall write what the owner of the newspaper wants. And telling opinion journalists what they can and cannot write is an anathema to many people, to the readers and to the writers themselves. And by the way, this notion that it's in support of free markets and personal liberties, I thought free markets and personal liberties included the right to say what you want, the right to express your views, the right to have different opinions than your employer. So the whole notion, I think, was dishonest and one more blow to what has been a great American newspaper